Time. Richard Fuller.
Very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I shall go thoroughly through the amendments and therefore shall not detain the House for very long. On the amendment New Clause 1, to which the honourable gentleman has just briefly spoken about the future of the Infrastructure Bank, New Clause 1 would have the impact of not permitting a sale of the bank until the duties set out in the Climate Change Act of 2008 and the targets of the net zero commitment by 2050 have been maintained. I think that puts quite a significant stricture on the maintenance of one institution, one particular bank and its objectives, and I think the Honourable Gentleman probably recognised that. But I get his input, which is really to reflect on the sale of the previous bank, the Green Bank that was put in place under the coalition. He talked a bit about that and talked a little bit about the profits that they were making. I think it was 180 million or so pounds, maybe a little less last year. But I would hope that he would recognise a couple of things. First of all, that when the sale was made, the taxpayer benefited to the tune of 2.3 billion, that included a surplus of 186 million on taxpayers' invested funds and a commitment from the successful acquirer, Macquarie Bank, to invest a further £3 billion. So in the round, I actually don't think that was a bad transaction to make, because what it did enable was the attraction of more third-party capital, private capital, to try and achieve some of the objectives of that Green Bank under its new owners. Indeed, that has been the case. And that, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is part of the balance here, isn't it? With this infrastructure bank, how are we going to evaluate its abilities and its success in attracting third-party capital? So I think if the honourable gentleman does reflect, I think his broad point is a fair point to make in New Clause 1, but I don't think, and I would hope you wouldn't move it to a vote, because I think there's arguments, strong arguments on the other side, and I certainly wouldn't support the points that he would be trying to make with that amendment. On the Labour amendments, New Clause 2 and Amendment 5, again, I can understand some of the import here, which is to say here is an opportunity with a major institution that we're going to look at the infrastructure of the country, try and expand the infrastructure of the country. We want to make sure that it has a full focus on the round of public interest in the things that it's doing in our name. And I think that intention is a good intention. But as the Honourable Lady opposite knows, and we've talked about this, I think, in committee, there are trade-offs to be made within those sets of objectives. And as we add objectives to our institutions, those trade-offs have the purpose of making it more obscure to us as parliamentarians and more obscure to the public about what the intention of the bank will be. And I think, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that the objectives that the government have set out here are already quite clear. They have the benefit of clarity that we know what they are, but they do cover a very wide range of sectors and a very wide range of intentions, but with the underlying core objective about helping us to meet our green net zero and climate change objectives. So my question really to the opposition is, where do they see, if they wish us to support their amendment, where do they see those trade-offs being made between achieving those objectives and having a duty to reduce economic inequalities within and between regions, and another objective to improve productivity, pay, jobs and living standards, and another objective to support supply chain resilience? Because very few of us would disagree with some of those objectives. In fact, the government is making great strides on some of those objectives with its levelling up initiatives. But we have to accept that as we ask our institutions, we give directions to some of these institutions with a broad range of objectives, we are, as Democrats, losing some of the control over the way in which public money can be directed and giving more discretion to the chief executives of those organisations to do as they see fit, not perhaps as we were laying down in statute. So I would encourage the opposition to just think again that perhaps having the clarity and the precision of objectives which is here is precisely what will enable this Parliament and future Parliaments to be able to have and exercise control over the infrastructure bank. The honourable gentleman, who I think today is speaking for all the Liberal Democrats, as he's gracefully been here for a number of the debates, talked a little bit about the water companies again. I would hope that he will have been listening today and will be reflecting back to his own party leadership that some of the publicity that the Liberal Democrats has put out has been substantially misleading about the intentions of the government, about the actions of this government, and that he would reflect that perhaps back to his party leaders. We do, obviously, parties make political statements all the time this way and that, but I think on this particular issue, and particularly as he's now followed up with his amendment about how the issue of water company discharge can be managed, that he will see that it is a serious issue, and therefore we should treat it in a serious manner. The objectives of Amendment 4, to provide support elicited in subsection 4, so what the bank can actually provide, can only happen after the water companies have produced a costed, time-limited plan. I think the water companies would say, we sort of have already done that. They have a plan, it's just not a plan that can be implemented like that in the flash of an eye, to mix my metaphors, really. So I'm not sure that the amendment will have the intention that the honourable gentleman wishes it to have, given what the water companies are already doing and what the government is already doing with the monitoring and the objectives being set to reduce sewage discharge. I will step over what the SNP spokesperson will talk, because I'm sure he'll be able to elucidate that point most clearly. I think we've heard it here a number of times, but it never bores us for the repetition. And finally, on the issue of the government's amendment, can I just thank the Minister for listening to the points that were made at committee and coming forward with his amendment. I can see that the opposition haven't put down a further amendment on that, which I think is a sign that he's got that judgment call right.